What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, folks, we got some more manipulated garbage coming down the pipeline from NBC. And, you know, NBC is this giant corporation, right? This is a pet peeve of mine. I'm going to rant right quick. NBC is a giant corporation. They produce news, folks. They have a whole TV station that they broadcast nationwide. They have all these affiliate outlets or whatever all over the country, folks. And this news article I'm about to read to you is a one-for-one copy-paste from the Associated Press. Literally. One-for-one copy-paste of the Associated Press. Check this out. Federal judge orders release of 16 migrants detained in Idaho raid, citing due process violations. But were those really due process violations? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so, folks. But there's so much manipulation in here. Normally, I probably wouldn't cover something like this. But I was reading through this, and I was like, hang on, they're just trying to manipulate everything right here. I mean, and it's a lot even for the Associated Press, who manipulate just about everything. Let's get into this, y'all. A federal judge has ordered the release of 16 people detained by immigration officials during an FBI-led raid at a rural Idaho racetrack last month. U.S. District Judge Lynn Winmill ruled Wednesday that keeping the migrants jailed without bond violated their due process rights, and he ordered that they be released while they wait for their immigration cases to be resolved. Hang on just a second. So, you know, this whole bond was implemented because, for one reason, right? You're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. But hang on, let's walk this back for a second. These people, they called them migrants, but they're not migrants, folks. They're not. They're absolutely not. They're either criminal aliens or they're illegal migrants. Those are two totally different things, right, than a regular migrant. Migrants, they come into this country through the proper process, and they have nothing to worry about from immigration and customs enforcement. Criminal aliens and illegal migrants absolutely do, because they are subject to deportation. Now, these people committed crimes, and they are also not supposed to be in the country. So, that puts them at a particularly high flight risk. So, withholding their right to be released, I think that does not violate any due process. We do this all the time, folks, especially with anybody that is a high flight risk. They withhold their bond. They won't allow them to be released on bond. They detain these people until they can go answer for their crimes, right? That's a normal process. That is their due process, by the way. That's all part of the due process that they call. So, once again, folks, these people, they're coming from a place of bias. And they're trying to make you think that, the Trump administration is violating due process. But hang on, describe what that due process is. Because for any of these 16 migrants that are actually criminal aliens, their due process is wholly different than yours. Right? Because they have two choices. They can either put them through criminal proceedings where they get the same due process rights that you would get, or they can choose to deport them if they've committed a crime. They don't have to be put through the criminal justice system. They can just be deported. Now, answer me this. How are you going to deport somebody if you release them from detention? That's why this doesn't make any sense. Many of them have lived in the U.S. for decades and lacked any criminal history, Winmill noted. That doesn't matter. They're still all a flight risk because they're all in the country illegally. Some are married to U.S. citizens or have children who are U.S. citizens, according to court documents. That doesn't matter. That's totally irrelevant. Like, once again, do they take into account if you get a speeding ticket that, I don't know, your wife is pregnant or anything like that? If you have to go to court and your wife's pregnant, having the kid that day, do you think they care about that? I mean, sure, you might be able to go to them and plead with them, but if they're really wanting to be a prick, about the situation? No, they can make you stay there. They can detain you, do whatever they want to. That is irrelevant. What that is emotion playing on behalf of this judge. These judges are activists, as a matter of fact, and they rule through emotion instead of through the Constitution. That's exactly what they're doing because, well, let's take into account that they have a wife that's a U.S. citizen or they have children that are U.S. citizens. How does that matter? How does that pertain to their immigration status or the crime that they have committed? If it's a bad enough crime and we want them to be held to account, we want to get justice for the victims, they will stay in the country. They will go through the criminal justice system. But once again, if they are not in the country legally, that puts them at a particularly high risk of flight. That's it. In an emailed statement to the Associated Press, the Department of Homeland Security said Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents lawfully arrested the detainees during the raid and added that an activist judge is ordering lawbreakers to roam free. That is right. The Trump administration is committed to restoring the rule of law and common sense to our immigration system and will continue to fight for the arrest, detention, and removal of aliens who have no right to be in this country, the department said. So that right there tells you everything you need to know, folks. They have no right to be in the country. That means they have no immigration case whatsoever, because if they had any right to be in the country, they would have an open immigration case. So that's all that needs to be said right there. Of course, that's a statement from one side, so we need to take into account that they could be lying. The October 19th raid at the privately operated outdoor track in Wilder was led by the FBI as part of an investigation into suspected illegal gambling. More than 200 officers from at least 14 agencies, including U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Border Patrol, participated in the raid, detaining around 400 people for hours, including many U.S. citizens. Now, what that is meant to do right there is, you see, they told you, some of the agencies were the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Border Patrol, and they detained U.S. citizens. Well, hang on. You just told us earlier that the FBI was leading the task force and that there was 14 different agencies. Why would you tell us, including many U.S. citizens? Like, folks, think about it like this. All right, if they go arrest somebody for murder, right? An American citizen for murder in Los Angeles. Do they need to inform you that this person is a U.S. citizen? Right? If they go raid somewhere and they find like a drug smuggling operation, like an inter-country drug smuggling operation, do they need to tell you that all of these people are American citizens? No. We know that 16 of these 400 people were not American citizens. You told us this at the beginning of the news article. What they're doing right there is that is meant to make you think that Immigration and Customs Enforcement detained American citizens. They want you to believe that they're deporting American citizens. They are pushing this so hard because they're constantly conflating all kinds of different nonsense. That's why they call these people migrants, because migrants are also U.S. citizens. Witnesses described aggressive tactics, including zip-tying children or separating young kids from their parents for an hour or more. See, there we go again with more manipulation. Separating young kids from their parents. Think about it like this, folks. If you decide one day, just randomly, that you're going to load up the wife and kids into the car, and you're going to go and rob a bank, and you happen to get caught, would you call that separating you from your wife and children? No. Generally, that would be described as you got arrested because you robbed a freaking bank. But what they're doing with this is, they're family separating here. That's what they're doing. They're separating families. Oh, it's so evil for an hour because these people got arrested for illegal gambling. Hang on just a second. Illegal gambling, huh? So, wait a minute. Children are not supposed to be around any form of gambling at all, right? You're supposed to be 21 or older to get into any casino or a racetrack. Why were these kids here? These people could have their children taken away from them for this. It's called child endangerment, I think. Or it's called something else. Putting your children in adult situations, essentially. I forget what the charge is called. But it's also called child endangerment, I do believe. But I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me on that. But they're trying to pretend like this is abnormal. Like, I'm sorry, if you go into Walmart with your kids and you rob something, you get arrested, your kids are not going to go to jail with you. No, CPS is going to take your kids from you. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, whose agency oversees Border Patrol and ICE, denied that children were zip-tied. FBI spokesperson Sandra Baker initially said no restraints or rubber bullets were used on children, but later amended that statement, replacing children with young children. Yeah, because if you're 16 or 17, you're still going to get arrested. You're still going to get zip-tied. What's wrong with that? The raid resulted in only a handful of gambling-related arrests, while 105 people were arrested on suspicion of immigration violations. Many of them signed voluntary agreements to leave the country before they were able to talk to immigration lawyers, said Nikki Ramirez-Smith, an immigration attorney whose firm is representing 15 of the people released this week. Hang on just a second. 105 people were arrested on suspicion of immigration violations. Many of them, but you're not going to tell us how many. I wonder if all of them were in the country illegally. Like, once again, folks, they're not going to give you that information. That is something that is pertinent to this story that they should expound upon, but they don't. And that is intentional because what they are doing here is narrative building instead of fact bringing. Instead of truth-telling or news-giving, they are narrative building on a consistent basis, folks. Like I said, the manipulation is off the charts on this one. And then they give you a biased statement from an immigration lawyer. It is what it is, folks. Like, this is what our news media has come to. It is almost, or it's pretty much, it's tantamount to postmodernism right here, where you can't trust anything that comes out of these outlets at all. Just 18 people detained in the raid have sought their release in federal courts in Idaho, according to online court records. One of them had that request initially dismissed after a judge found they did not include enough detail in their court filing, but the judge also gave them 30 days to try again. Another person is now pursuing release through a different federal court after they were transferred to a detention facility in a different state. The federal judge in Idaho said that nearly all of his colleagues who have faced similar requests from immigration detainees have come to the same conclusion, that non-citizens who are detained while already present in the United States are entitled to due process rights. No, that is not true. That is absolutely not true. That is a fake statement, right? That's a real statement, but he's lying, basically, is what I'm getting at here, because, once again, our code explicitly says that if you are in the country illegally, right, if you cross that border illegally and it's within 2 years, the due process rights you are given is expedited removal. That's what you get, folks. That is exactly what you get. Now, if it's longer than 2 years, yes, you must go through an immigration court. But even still, these people, they are attempting to get everybody that they detain, any criminal alien or illegal migrant that they detain, they are offering them $1,000 if they self-deport. If they sign a paper saying that they're going to deport themselves, they leave the country. and we will actually bring you and give you $1,000 if you leave the country. That's what they are doing with most of these people, right? We heard that earlier in the news article. That is a good thing. We need to get these people out of the country. These people, they want to try to make you think that that's some violation of due process rights. Right, folks? Look, check this out. Due process rights is different for different situations, right? Like if you commit a crime, then your due process rights, it's extensive, as a matter of fact. You get brought to jail or detained if it's a severe enough crime, right? If it's not, then you get a summons. You got to appear in court. They trust you. You're not a flight risk. But if you're a flight risk, you commit a higher crime. You get arrested, and you have the possibility of being released on bond, but you got to see a judge for that. Judge issues a bond. Then you can be released. But then you have to show back up to arraignment and plead guilty or not guilty and have a lawyer appointed to you if you do not have one. Right? And then you go to court to figure out whether you did that. That is if you commit a crime, right? If you're in the country illegally, it's a whole different set of due process rights. Like I said, if it's 2 years or less, and good luck proving that, by the way, if it's 2 years or less, the due process rights is expedited removal. They pick you up, they detain you, and they ship you back to your home country. Right? If it's longer than 2 years, then they pick you up, they detain you, right? You don't get bond. You must be detained until you see an immigration judge. Then that immigration judge will figure out if you can be released to come back for a hearing on to see if you can stay or whatever, right? To see if you can get some sort of paperwork to fill out. But most of these people, they don't go through that process. They get picked up, they see an immigration judge, and if they don't have any sort of claim to stay in this country, they get kicked out of the country. That's it. They get deported expeditiously under the Trump administration, as a matter of fact. No parole. All right, parole is supposed to be for asylum. That's a whole different process right there. That's a whole different set of due process rights. It's different, but they're trying to make you think because you've probably watched Law and Order a bunch, so you know they need their Miranda rights, and they need to go to, bond out of jail and all this other nonsense. That's not how that works, folks. That's absolutely not how that works. Reality is not a movie. Treating the detention of non-citizens stopped at or near the border differently from non-citizens who reside within the country is not an anomaly. No, they are the same. Like I said, there's a 2-year cutoff on that. Once again, I just explained all this. Instead, it reflects the long-recognized distinction in our immigration laws and the Constitution that due process protections apply to non-citizens residing within the country, but not to those stopped at or near the border, Winmill wrote. He knows he's lying about that. It is not the same thing. There is a time limit on that. Yes, if it's longer than 2 years. Like, once again, the law actually says within 200 miles of the border or anywhere in the country. I don't know why it says that specifically. It's kind of confusing. But if you're caught in the country illegally within 200 miles, you get deported expeditiously. If you're caught anywhere else in the country within 2 years, you get deported expeditiously. Anything longer than that, like I explained earlier, you go through immigration court. These people are insane, y'all. Ramirez Smith said Winmill's release orders do a great job of putting into perspective what the issues are. They'll just stay home with their families and will file the applications for relief in immigration court, and they'll get a court hearing. Those trial dates will probably be years out, she said, because of a hefty backlog of more than 3 million cases in immigration courts. Yes, but you know what? If we're talking about these people that were arrested for whatever this illegal gambling nonsense, that's a whole different set of circumstances, folks. Not only are they in the country illegally, and they would go through, they would normally have that due process where they go through the immigration courts, but now they committed a crime. So now it's solely up to the administration whether they want to deport these people or they want to keep them here to answer for their crimes. Right? If they keep them here and answer for their crimes, once again, folks, they go through the regular due process and they get that due process. If not, they have the option to expeditiously deport these people. Once again, if you commit a crime and you're in the country illegally, your choices are very, very, very limited, folks. They are trying to pretend that that is not a thing. It's insane, y'all. Still, President Donald Trump has taken steps to reduce the backlog, instructing judges during his first term to deny entire categories of asylum claims, such as for victims of gang or domestic violence. During his current term, the Trump administration has fired dozens of immigration judges and authorized about 600 military lawyers to work as temporary immigration judges. The administration has also frequently turned to what normally would be routine immigration hearings into deportation traps, with government lawyers quickly dismissing asylum cases so the migrants who sought asylum can be immediately arrested in the courthouse halls. Yes, and that is a good thing. That is smart on the administration. Because, Joe Biden flooded the freaking country with criminal aliens. And somehow we got to get these people out of here. But these people, they want these criminals in the country. Right? Once again, folks, there is not very many reasons why you would, cross a country's border outside of the ports of entry. There's not very many reasons why. And none of them are good. Right? None of them are for good reasons, right? You're not looking for economic opportunities in the land of the free if you cross our border illegally and decide to just sneak on into the country. Like, once again, you are not seeking a better life if you are doing that, because you are violating our laws. Like, nobody in their right mind would think that they could go into a country illegally and just set up shop and live the rest of their life. Like, who would think that? That is an absurdity to think that, and we are not stupid. I am not that dumb to think that these people, they just want a better life. But some people are goaded into thinking that way and will vehemently defend that all these people, they're just here for a better life. They're just seeking economic opportunity, or they're coming from a hellscape or something like that. But like I tell these people all the time, why don't you go back home and make your country better? Advocate on behalf of your country. Do something to make it better. Clean the streets up. Do whatever you can, right? Write your congressman. Form a revolution and take over if you need to. Like, do whatever you got to do. But do it in your own country. Make your country America instead of coming here. That's what I say. If you choose to break our laws, we don't want you here. We have enough criminals already. Right? Our prisons are flooded with people constantly. It's insane, y'all. And I can't stand these immigration advocates say, oh, well, they deserve their due process rights. Right? But most people don't even know what that means. They kind of understand, right? Well, they kind of think, well, maybe that's Miranda rights. Well, they got to go to court. Well, that's not necessarily true, right? Because, once again, like I break down, there's all kinds of different situations that due process rights are invoked, and they're different all over the place. But it's insane, and it's like arguing with a freaking wall here. But I've been rambling for a while, so you guys let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. That is all I got. I want to thank everybody for watching. You guys don't forget to smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can, and click that join button. Sign up and become a member. That's the best way to help this channel grow and expand and do all the good stuff, right? But you guys, I'm truly, truly grateful that I turned my life over to Jesus a long time ago, folks. I may not be the best, a model Christian or whatever, and I'm not a Bible-thumping Christian or anything like that, but I do have a strong faith in God, and I do believe in the tenets of Christianity, folks, that, we should live and die by the book, right? Because the Bible is basically basic instructions before leaving Earth. It is literally the guide stone, if you will. It's the Rosetta Stone for how to get to heaven. Just read through the book. That's all you got to do, folks. And just have faith in God and trust that He will not put you through anything that you cannot make it through. Right? You will not be placed in a position that you just can't do. Right? God knows you better than you know yourself. It's absolute, y'all. Absolute. But you guys try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.